The Omnivore's Dilemma, Part 2, The Industrial Organic Meal, Chapter 10, Big Organic. Once upon a time. I am certainly not the only one who has learned the truth about the industrial food chain. In recent years, more and more Americans have discovered the same sad facts. A lot of them are trying to get away from the kingdom of corn and processed foods by buying organic food. And in my part of the world, there is no greater temple to all the things organic, natural, and unprocessed than my local Whole Foods supermarket. I confess that I really enjoy shopping at Whole Foods. It has some of the same feeling as browsing a good bookstore. Maybe that's because at Whole Foods I spend a lot of my time reading, not books, but labels. Every food in the store seems to have a little story attached to it. Take the range-fed sirloin steak in the meat case. There's a flyer on the counter that says once upon a time the steak was part of a steer that spent its days living in beautiful places. Among the places the steer got to visit were high mountain meadows, thick aspen groves, and miles of sagebush-filled fat flats. Now a steak like that has got to taste better than one without a story. You can bet it will cost more too. These food stories are showing up everywhere. On a recent shopping trip, I filled my shopping cart with eggs from cage-free vegetarian hens, milk from cows that live free from unnecessary fear and distress, wild salmon caught by Native Americans in Yakutat, Alaska, population 833, heirloom tomatoes from Capay Valley Farm, $4.99 a pound, one of the early pioneers of the organic movement. The organic chicken I picked even had a name, Rosie. Rosie was a free-range chicken from Petaluma Poultry. Almost all of the labels featured the word organic. 40 years ago, there was no such category as organic food. Today, it is a 20 billion business, the fastest growing part of the food industry. The word organic has become a kind of shorthand for food that is healthier or more natural or chemical-free. Yet, as I had learned, organic has different meanings. Now, I had more questions than answers. For example, can there be such a thing as an organic TV dinner? What about an organic Twinkie? Exactly how different is organic food from industrial food? I was about to find out. Or once the birth of organic food. Once upon a time, all food was organic. It was grown without the help of fossil fuels, pesticides, or chemical fertilizers. As we have seen, that all began to change about 50 years ago with the growth of the industrial food chain. One of the first to notice this change was a man named J.I. Rodale. In 1940, he started a magazine called Organic Gardening and Farming. In his magazine, Rodale wrote about the health benefits of growing food without synthetic chemicals, organically. But the idea of organic food did not really catch on until 1969. That year marked the height of the counterculture of the 1960s. Civil rights and anti-war protests rocked the country. Young people were rebelling against a society they thought was violent, corrupt, and immoral. Some dropped out to join communes, groups of people living and working on farms. And part of this counterculture was the environmental movement. It was spurred in part by a 1962 book called Silent Spring by a woman named Rachel Carson. In it, she warned of the dangers of pesticides like TDT. Events in the news in 1969 also made people aware of the dangers of pollution. A giant oil spill off Santa Barbara blackened California's coastline. A river in Cleveland was so full of filth that it caught fire. Suddenly, people started using the word ecology and talking about cleaning up the planet. The first Earth Day was held in April 1970. And the idea of organic food began to catch on. Eating whole wheat bread and whole grains like brown rice became a symbol of the new movement. Processed food like white bread was called plastic food. The first organic food co-ops were founded. Neighbors would get together once a week and order organic vegetables from farmers. They had to agree on what to order. Often they bought whatever the local farmers had to offer. To the young people who founded those first co-ops, the word organic meant more than a method of farming. It meant living in harmony with nature instead of trying to control it. It meant being free from the control of big corporations. Growing organic food was a way to live their principles and not just talk about them. Most of those food co-ops are gone now. Many of them have been driven out of business by natural organic supermarket chains like Whole Foods. Today, in the average supermarket, there's a selection of organic fruits and vegetables flown in from all over the world. You can buy your organics at any time of the year, no matter the season. And you don't have to get a dozen other people to agree on what to buy. Industrial organic. Industrial organic. But if you look a little closer, you'll see that something has been left behind. The organic food in stores like Whole Foods is organic because it's grown without chemical fertilizers or pesticides. Yes, much of it is also industrial. Most organic vegetables in the U.S. are grown in large monoculture farms growing only one crop, far from the people who eat it. Most of it is processed and sold by the same industrial food chain as the corn from George Naylor's farm. Because this food chain has elements of both, I call it industrial organic. For example, some organic milk comes from cows on small farms, but most organic milk comes from factory farms. The cows on these farms spend their time in a fenced lot eating organic grain, except for 3 times a day they are hooked up to milking machines. Likewise, organic beef is often raised in organic feedlots. The cows are fed corn just like the cows at Porky, but their feed is organic. The government rules about organic food allow companies to make organic high fructose corn syrup, words I never expected to see combined. This organic high fructose corn syrup would come in useful when making organic processed foods like organic soda or organic TV dinners. I found one such TV dinner that included 31 ingredients from gar and xanthan gum to natural grill flavor. Several of the ingredients were the synthetic additives that are permitted under federal organic rules. Hippie food. The TV dinner was made by a company called Cascadian Farm. The story of Cascadian tells you a lot about the growth of the organic food movement and how it has changed. Cascadian started as a kind of hippie commune in 1972, founded by a fellow named Gene Kahn and his friends. Like other young people at the time, Kahn had the idea of getting back to the land and changing the American food system. Today, Cascadian is owned by General Mills, and Kahn is a General Mills vice president. Cascadian doesn't even grow its own food anymore. Instead, the company buys produce from large organic industrial farms, many of them monocultures. On the Cascadian package, there's a picture of a pretty little farm, the original commune. The place still exists, but it's just for show. I guess so they can take the photos of it. One overcast morning, Gene Kahn himself drove me out to see it, about 75 miles northeast of Seattle. We followed the twists of the Skagit River in his new forest green Lexus. His vanity license plates say organic. Kahn is a boyish-looking man in his 50s. He spoke without regret about the compromises he's made along the path, from organic farmer to agribusiness executive. He explained that part of the idea behind Cascadian was to get folks to eat whole foods instead of processed foods. They wanted people to be able to buy their food from local farmers instead of big corporations. But somewhere along the line, Kahn decided that it was impossible to make all of these changes. So he decided to focus on how food was grown. You have a choice of getting sad about all that or moving on, he told me. We tried hard to build a cooperative community and a local food system, but at the end of the day, it wasn't successful. This is just lunch for most people, just lunch. Agribusiness moves in. So Kahn, like some other organic farmers, started following the model of the industrial food chain. Cascadian started adding value to some of its food by freezing berries or making them into jam. Once they started processing food, they discovered they could make more money by buying produce from other farmers than by growing it themselves. The demand for organic food really jumped in the year 1990 after the alar food scare. Alar was a chemical conventional growers sprayed on apples to help them ripen. In 1990, the Environmental Protection Agency found that alar could cause cancer. Suddenly, the demand for organic apples and all sorts of organic produce shot through the roof. People who had never thought about organic food started buying it. Organic food companies saw their business boom overnight. Some, like Cascadian, borrowed money to increase their production. However, borrowed too much. When the rush to buy organic food slowed down, Gene Kahn was forced to sell control of Cascadian to Welch's. The hippie commune was now under the control of corporate America. Other large agribusinesses corporations started paying attention to organic food. It wasn't because they suddenly saw the errors of their way. They just recognized that a growing number of consumers wanted organic food, and they wanted a piece of that business. Gerber's, Heinz, Dole, ConAgra, and ADM all bought organic food brands or started their own, growing by the rules. Now, all sorts of food, with labels like natural and organic, began to show up in the supermarkets. Those words have been great marketing tools, but what exactly did they mean? In 1990, Congress passed a law telling the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, to decide on some rules for organic food. What followed was a great debate to determine the future of the organic industry. On one side of the fight were the agribusiness corporations, which had just jumped onto the organic food bandwagon. They fought to define organic as loosely as possible. For example, they wanted the right to call genetically modified food, GMO, organic. They also wanted to be able to fertilize their organic fields with sewage sludge. At first, the USDA went along. In 1997, it proposed a very loose set of rules that gave agribusinesses everything it wanted. In response, there was a huge outcry from small organic farmers and the public. A flood of protest forced the USDA back to the drawing board. One big question was whether there could be such a thing as organic processed food. Gene Kahn sat on the board that set the new standards. He argued that the rules for organics had to allow synthetic additives and preservatives. Without synthetics, processed foods like TV dinners just can't be manufactured. Many people from the old organic movement argued that to put synthetics in a processed food and then to call it organic was a fraud. They said there could be no such thing as truly organic. Twinkie or TV dinner. In the end, Kahn's side won out. That's why there are now organic processed foods, although still no organic Twinkie. These new rules cleared the way for a huge growth in the organic food market. If we had lost on synthetics, Gene Kahn told me, we'd be out of business. Down on the industrial organic farm. I guess I missed the old Cascadian, the one on the package, or at least I missed the idea of it. This just didn't fit my picture of what an organic farm should look like. Get over it, Gene Kahn told me. Just because a farm is big, it doesn't mean it isn't organic. The important thing, he would argue, is that behind every organic TV dinner or chicken stands acres of land that will no longer be doused with chemicals. I could see his point. This is clearly a great thing for the environment and the public health. So I decided to go see some industrial organic farms for myself. Kahn sent me to visit a large organic farm operation called Greenways in California's Central Valley. That's where they grow vegetables for Cascadian Farm frozen dinners. Greenways Organic is really 2,000 acres of organic farmland tucked into a 24,000-acre conventional farm. That gave me a chance to compare the two types of farming side by side. Even up close, it's almost impossible to tell them apart. The crops, the machines, the crews, and the fields look the same. The big difference is one you can't see. For every chemical that is put on the conventional fields, Greenways finds a substitute for the organic fields. In place of petrochemical fertilizers, Greenways organic acres are fed with compost from a nearby horse farm and by poultry manure. Instead of toxic pesticides, crops are sprayed with natural substances like PT, a pesticide made from a common soil bacteria. Organic weeding. Organic farming rules do not allow chemical weed killers, so Greenways has to use other methods to fight weeds. Even before the crops are planted, the fields are watered to get any weed seeds to grow. A tractor then plows the field to kill them. This is repeated several times. Later, when the crops are high, farm workers using propane torches to burn the weeds use propane torches to burn the weeds by hand. The result of all this hard work is fields that look just as clean as if chemical weed killers had been used. By chemical by chemicals means no chemicals means no toxic runoff into rivers and oceans. But it turns out that plowing the land over and over damages the soil as much as chemical weed killers do. It kills off the nitrogen fixing bacteria that make the soil fertile. It releases a lot of nitrogen into the air. Because of this damage, industrial organic farmers have to add a lot of nitrogen fertilizer in their fields. Where do they get it? From compost manure, or fish meal. Most of the organic food sold in America comes from farms like Greenways. Supermarket chains like Whole Foods or Walmart are not set up to do business with dozens of small family-owned farms. It takes too much time and money to coordinate. It takes much more sense to buy from large suppliers like Cascadian. And for the same reason, it's much easier for Cascadian to buy its produce from large farms like Greenways. To meet the demands of their customers, Greenways has to farm on an industrial scale. It must plant one or two crop varieties that ripen at the same time. It must plant foods that can survive shipment across the country. It must buy fertilizer from someone else instead of getting it from animals on the farm. Again, Gene Khan had many other people think this is just fine, and many other people think this is just fine. After all, because of companies like his, thousands of acres of American farmland are now chemical-free. Organic food can now be found in most supermarkets. Surely that is a very good thing. Let us sell you lettuce. I learned more about the industrial organic system when I visited Earthbound Farm. Earthbound grows 80% of the organic lettuce in America. You may have seen some of it in plastic boxes in your supermarket. You could argue that Earthbound represents industrial organic farming at its best. The company was started in the 1980s by Drew and Myra Goodman, two farmers who started with exactly no farming experience. They are childhood friends from New York City who started dating when they both went to college in California. During a break before going to grad school, they started a roadside organic farm on a few rented acres, growing raspberries and baby salad greens. Every Sunday, Myra would wash and bag a bunch of lettuce for their own use, a salad for each night of the week. They discovered that the whole leaf lettuces stayed fresh right through to dinner the following Saturday. So began the pre-washed salad business in America. Before the Goodmans, salad for most Americans meant iceberg lettuce. They introduced dozens of different salad mixes to mainstream America. Along the way, they changed the way lettuces were grown, harvested, cleaned, and packed. And today, Earthbound is a company that takes in $400 million a year. I met Myra Goodman, now a tanned, talkative 42-year-old, over lunch at the company's roadside stand in the Carmel Valley. Unlike Cascadian Farm, Earthbound still grows its own produce. Most of its farmland is an hour northeast of Carmel in the Salinas Valley. That fertile valley is cooled by sea breezes, making it an ideal spot for growing lettuces 9 months of the year. In winter, the company picks up and moves its operation and many of its employees south to Yuma, Arizona. Myra explained that Earthbound Farm's growth exploded in 1993. That's when the Costco chain placed an order. Costco was moving 2,000 cases a week to start, Myra said, and the order kept increasing. Other chains like Walmart, Lucky, and Albertsons soon followed. The Goodmans realized their days of washing lettuce in the living room were over. We didn't know how to farm on that scale, Drew told me, and we needed a lot more land fast. So the Goodmans entered into partnerships with growers who knew how to grow, harvest, pack, and distribute large quantities of produce. As part of the deal, the growers had to agree to change to organic farming methods. If you include all the farmland growing fruits and vegetables for Earthbound, it comes to a total of 25,000 organic acres. The Goodmans estimate that this has eliminated some 270,000 pounds of pesticide and 8 million pounds of petrochemical fertilizer that would otherwise have been applied to those fields. The salad factory. The Earthbound Farm looks like a giant patchwork of color: dark green, burgundy, pale green, blue-green. Each color block is a different type of lettuce. The lettuce is grown in raised beds. Each bed is 80 inches wide and smooth and flat as a tabletop. Workers use a laser to make sure they are perfectly level. That's so that the custom building harvester can snip each leaf at precisely the same point. To control pests, 1 out of every 7 beds is planted with flowers. The flowers attract lacewings and a type of fly that eats the lettuce-eating bugs. Pesticides, even the ones allowed by the USDA organic rules, are seldom sprayed. The leaves are harvested with a machine that Earthbound designed. It moves down the rows, cutting the baby greens at the same point just above the crown. Spidery arms gently rake through the bed in advance of the blade, scoring off any mice that might find their way into the salad. The leaves are blown into plastic trays, and the trays are loaded by hand into refrigerator trucks. From that point, they will be refrigerated until they reach your supermarket. Once filled, the trucks deliver their cargo of leaves to a processing plant. There the leaves are sorted, mixed, and washed, dried, and packaged. The whole plant is kept at 36 degrees. Because of the refrigeration, the employees, most of them Mexicans, are dressed in full-length down coats. The plant washes and packs 2.5 million pounds of lettuce a week. That's a truly amazing amount of lettuce. It also represents a truly amazing amount of energy. Think of the electricity bill to refrigerate a 200,000 square foot plant. Think of the diesel fuel needed to truck all that salad to supermarkets across the country, or to manufacture the plastic containers it's packed in. A 1-pound box of pre-washed lettuce contains 80 calories of food energy. Growing, chilling, washing, packaging, and transporting that box of organic salad to a plate on the East Coast takes more than 4,600 calories of fossil fuel energy, or 57 calories of fossil fuel energy for every calorie of food. What could be more healthy than eating a salad? It's basically a bunch of leaves eaten raw. And organic salad has to be even better, right? Still, the idea of packing lettuce in plastic boxes and shipping it 5 days and 3,000 miles away didn't feel very organic to me. Like Gene Kahn, Drew and Myra Goodman make no apologies for the way they do business. Their company has done a world of good for its land, its workers, the growers it works with, and its customers. But is this kind of organic the best we can do? Before I could make up my mind, I had to visit one more industrial organic farm. I was on my way to meet Rosie, the organic chicken.